Hello, everyone. Welcome to Next Big Future, where I talk about the world's biggest problems and the world's biggest solutions and how it can make our future better faster. Previously, I identified 2023-2032 as a decade of change. This will be a critical decade for adoption of self-driving cars and humanoid robots. And this will be a decade where winners and losers will be sorted out. Some technology determines the fate of your life, your family, your country, and your world. And these technologies are in that class, in the class of farming and industrialization. It'll be critical to be as early as possible in their adoption. Things like the internet and e-commerce, that was a winner and loser sorting thing. You can see that Amazon is well over $1 trillion. And when you add up all the other big retailers in the United States, they are less than Amazon. So Amazon was a big winner there. Same thing for Tesla with electric cars. Electric cars still early in the adoption phase. It's only a few percentage in terms of the total number of cars. But Tesla, as an early winner, the early winner, has a market cap exceeding the sum of all those other car companies because they are an old technology and Tesla is a winner with the new technology. For personal people in your career, being earlier and having more experience with programming tends to mean that you can have double the salary of people who don't have those skills. Although, certainly other people can have finance skills, other things, or medical skills that can get them up to a high salary. In general, there's far more programmers, and that is something that can make a difference for your personal career. Cars are certainly correlated. The more cars your country has, the higher percentage of that, then the greater per capita GDP wealth you have. This may not be, as some things like electricity, a causation thing, but maybe just a correlation aspect where having that enables one or the other, although they're certainly both a virtuous circle. Having the wealth to have the car means that you can increase the wealth of your country and your personal situation. So the big six tech companies are 40% of the value of the NASDAQ, 30% of the S&P, 50% of the NASDAQ 100. Technology has adoption curves, S-curve for technology adoption, as well as the first 2.5% adopters are innovators. The next 13.5% are early adopters, and then you have the mass market. So for being early, you want to be an innovator or early adopter if at all possible. If not, then to be an investor in innovators and early adopters. And the most profit opportunity for technology adoption tends to be for the early adopters or the innovators. You can see the larger scale effect, not just recently. When you look back hundreds of years, all countries were relatively poor. You go back 40 years or earlier, most people were peasants, and there was no automation. So then people in Africa tend to be as poor as people in Europe. But then more technology, difference-making technology was developed, like steam engines, like industrialization, rail, etc. And that was when the separation began, because the African and Asian countries were in the late adoption era, either because of education, infrastructure, being in the wrong place at the wrong time, etc. They were left behind. And that can be seen in the ranking of countries, that based on when they were industrialized, the level of industrialization, that totally correlates with the GDP per person in those countries. And that's how you know something is a huge difference maker, is that they end up sorting out countries in that level. And also sorting out the companies. Like I said, that the big six tech companies with more AI, with more programming, with more technology, the latest technology, are vastly more valuable than the non-tech companies. And it's still something that's going on today in terms of agricultural equipment, tractors that must have technology for Indian agricultural sector, and tractors are vastly important. And getting a tractor is vastly important for Indian farmers. So technology in agriculture is letting people move from having to do manual farming labor into non-farming work or highly productive farming work. And then you can see this correlation between energy levels, how much energy, which also determines how much equipment you can have, how much industrialization, that totally correlates with per capita income. And there were analysis from the 1800 to 1850 with the introduction of rail, how that cut the cost of transporting a ton of goods by half or by 5 to 6 times over land and water in various modes. And certain things that were not possible became possible. So that's what happened before. And self-driving cars and humanoid bots will have those kind of, and in those exact categories, in the technology stack of making things more efficient to move and making things more efficient to manufacture and lower the cost, which will then grow the pie. Having great agriculture, going from hunter-gatherer, where the world population is limited to 5 million or less, because you can't get enough food in just hunter-gathering, to various levels of agriculture, which enabled higher levels of population. And then industrialization enabled greater per capita income. So similarly, because self-driving will be impacting the cost of transportation, then it will have an impact on the world economy and the overall size and richness of people within that economy. You can see the transformation from the 1895 period, early industrialization, to today in the multiplication of productivity, where it takes less time, less work to buy the same goods. ArcInvest did analysis of ride-hailing and indicates that as the cost of ride-hailing drives the cost from the current Uber Lyft $2 per mile level, it's a great business at $50 billion, $100 billion for Uber and Lyft. Although that's in revenue, their actual profits are virtually nothing. To driving below the cost of, if you own your personal car at 70 cents per mile, or $2 per mile for a truck, then you can get the cost down to 50 cents or 25 cents with robotaxi level self-driving. And then that will triple the total number of miles driven, increase the size of the overall world economy. Similarly for Tesla bot, a human robot, that as you reduce the cost from $500,000, $100,000, $40,000 price of a car, it can get down to 1/30th the price of a car because it weighs 30 times less, has 30 times fewer batteries than an electric car. So getting down to $2,000 is perfectly doable, once you spread the software development costs across a large volume of humanoid robots. Then you can have the equivalent of 100 billion people at, with $2,000, you have 8,000 hours of work and then have to rest. You can just keep going on most hours of a year. That can get the price of labor down to 35 cents. So farm labor in China is currently $2 per hour. And then even with the cost of electricity built in, getting down to 35% means that you're, just like with a robotaxi, vastly increasing the supply and will increase the demand, which will increase the overall world economy. How many you have in each country will matter. That just like how many cars, how many cell phones is correlated with GDP per capita, how many humanoid robots per country, having 1 robot per person, having 10 robots per person, having 100 robots per person will be a factor in how wealthy your country is. Singapore, with just under 6 million people, with 50 or 60 bots per person, would have a combined human bot workforce equivalent to the current population of the United States. So a highly advanced country can outmatch a currently larger population country. And it's something that it will be increasing the it was a friction-free adoption that and reducing the friction within the economy. The shipping container, built in the 1960s, late 1960s, reduces the overall cost of delivering goods per unit by about 20 to 30%. And it has more impact the farther you go, like if you're shipping to farther distances. This is something that, if it reduces self-driving vehicles, reduces the cost per mile down to 22 cents per mile, and then reduce the cost of labor down to 35 cents per hour, will massively reduce friction in the economy and vastly grow the economy. So this is, again, coming on the level of fire, the wheel, farming, electricity, lights, phones, and mechanization. The more you have in your country, the more you have in the world, the richer you are. So self-driving cars and human robots are the most critical part of the AI wave. There are very interesting developments in science that come from AI, recently solving the protein folding problem with DeepMind, having generation of computer graphics and stuff for movie entertainment. Other things are being developed with AI, but changing how we move, how we make things, that is the bigger impact. It will be the next level of automation transportation. And human bots are unlimited and super exponential, so that we can build trillions of them, as I will explain. So going from 1900 to 2100, there were 100 million humans in the active non-agriculture economy. Only the developed world had an industrial workforce, and so that was 400 million people in the developed world out of 1.7 billion people in 1900, and of that, only about 100 million people were in the industrial workforce. Then by 1970, we had about half of the developed world in the non-agricultural industrial workforce. So we had 450 million, we had more people. And so the percentage of those people, doubled from say 25% to 50%, more than 4x. The world population went to 3.7 billion. So that was a shift from agriculture with the 1900 1970. Then 1970 and beyond, you have the large scale rise of China and Asian countries in terms of population, and the rest of the world kind of catching up. And then you had, by 2020, 2 billion people in the human workforce, non-agricultural. Total developed world population 3.3 billion, and then 7.9 billion. So there wasn't an increase in European and North American population that much, but it was China, parts of India, other parts of Asia joining and participating in the active developed world economy. So that was a 20x from the 1900 level in terms of human population, and it was matched with a nearly 100x increase in total world economy, 30x, about 10x increase in per capita income. So by 2040, if we get this widespread adoption of humanoid bots, we could get 20 billion humans and bots in the world in 2040 in an active economy. It would just be a matter of making a significant number of the 100, having humanoid bots match up to about the level of the car production. Car production is about like 70 to 90 million cars per year, and certainly get to 100 million cars per year. If you have 30x the number of humanoid bots you have for cars, you could have 3 billion cars per year. And so if you're scaling up that level, by 2040, getting to 15 billion bots, 5 billion humans, and 15 billion bots, you have 20 billion. So then you 10x the workforce, which is about the, close to the level from 1920 to 2020, a century worth of development in 20 years. And then get to 50 billion by 2050, and then scale up to 1 trillion bots by 2100. And then that will expand the world economy by 100 times over just getting 11 billion people fully engaged in the economy. So how does this differ from other robots? We've had robots before. We've had them for, 40, 50 years in factories. So the difference is there's only 3 million bots, and they're only in the factories. They're not, they're making cars, they're making planes, they're making ships, etc. And the US has almost $1 trillion worth of installed base of this kind of machinery. But they're like the mainframes. IBM computer mainframes were vastly important for big corporations in the 1960s, but they did not have a broader impact on a lot of society, although could have some time sharing a remote terminal, having that. But then the PC democratized computing, and then mobile cell phones and smartphones, further made it more easy and convenient to have this power and capability brought out. Similarly, trains allow you to move things, but the car allowed you to have it personalized. Having, households or individuals have that level of mechanized transportation. So that's the difference between the industrial robot and the humanoid bot. The humanoid bot will be vastly more widely applicable. It'll be frictionless to put it in. You don't have to change and make infrastructure. I don't have to make roads. I don't have to make a rail network to adopt it. I don't have to make a data center for my mainframe, right? And it's different from the Roomba robot, a few million of those for that specific task. But having a toaster, while convenient, is not a vacuum cleaner, is not something that is hugely difference making in terms of the grand scheme of productivity. Similarly, having planes, we had planes in World War I, but again, having something that's performs vastly better, can be qualitative difference, can be something that will make a quantitative difference in the adoption and in terms of the impact. And you can see that things like mobile phones, internet, PCs were fast adoption because there was differences in productivity, more so than with a dishwasher, clothes washer, etc. They were slower for adoption. Similarly, the difference between a dial-up modem, the convenience of that, and having it completely something is pop right in and use right away, it was the difference between that and the ISDN DSL cable lines, where there's instant on, instant start using it. Just having that little bit less friction in terms of the usage can have a huge difference. Similarly, having a large brick-like cell phone, was something that was only used by wealthy doctors, rich businessmen, versus flip phones and smartphones that became easier to use. So the difference between big and difficult to use, big and difficult to install, versus easy is a huge difference versus adoption. And we will have these humanoid robots working in factories. Giant AI has these upper torso, no legs, but just the arms and upper body of a humanoid bot. And they're proving that can work. And having many of them trained together is something that has enabled them to develop things faster. Tesla will be able to make tens of thousands and then millions of these bots for their own factories, and will have 100 times, 1,000 times the resources of giant AI. So Tesla will be able to develop these bots. So giant AI, the kind of proof of concept showing that Tesla will succeed with humanoid bots. And Tesla will succeed by using them first in their factories, which I'll discuss in a bit. But it'll be based using the self-driving technology that's already in 100,000 cars for FSD beta, with their latest version 10.69, which is making roads down winding, mountainous highways, difficult intersections, so not geographically limited like Waymo or Cruise, where they can only be in some parts of San Francisco sometimes, in Arizona where it's always sunny, has good weather. I think they're clear. They're choosing a highly mapped, restricted, easier case to do it versus going everywhere. And the amount of data that's being sent back by Tesla, and for AI, having more compute, having more data, having better algorithms is the winner. Tesla's sending back 2 gigabytes of data back to their central servers per car. And it's not just learning street signs, like seeing this picture, but it's looking at pedestrians and looking how pedestrians walk. So they have auto labeling that can label everything that's going on, and they can send to the Tesla bot development, humanoid bot development team, examples of people walking. And they have people walking from their car, delivering something to a house. So then they can train their bot to deliver things from their existing data. And being able to deliver something, you have a self-driving car that brings the cost down to 22 cents per mile. And then I have a bot that just can unload from the car and then walk over to deliver to a house. That can deliver pizzas, food, and all kinds of things. And that's, $100 billion or more business. So that could be a financial driver for them to get their first 10 million bots out there. And they have within their factories a digital self-management. This screen shows 53. It's a scoring of the paint job done on a car. So the human work team at that spot working on the paint can then say, okay, I need to fix the paint on the hood of this car, and then have it rescanned to get a new score. This is something that can power a loss function for a neural network. So then Tesla has every task already pre-mapped to enable early adoption for their factory. And they can do it station by station, task by task. So they're ready. And that is something that other companies, and you need to think about, is to how can you be ready for a humanoid bot future? How can you set up your systems to be there? How can you shift to companies that invest in companies that will be winning with AI and be an early adopter, innovative early adopter in this area? So it's a combination of self-driving and humanoid bots. There'll be technologies that will help feed each other, and having the infrastructure of supercomputers that you need will power this transition. Computing, we've had, like I said, all this success with AI, starting from the 1950s to 2020. The amount of computing correlates with solving bigger and bigger problems, and the speed of that has increased, and like how fast we're adding more compute power to it. And for humanoid bots, then in terms of the wealth of people, you can see here's the staff of the White House, the kitchen staff, that if you have humanoid bots, 50 of them, every person, if that became the case, decades down the road, that would mean every person would have the wealth of, a king or a president today, or for history. So how will this adoption go? Like, we already have 100,000 people using FSD beta in late Q2 of 2022. That will expand to 500,000 or more by the end of this year or first few months of 2023, and get towards 2 million by the end of 2023, get to 3 million by end of 2024, and then get to 8 million by the end of 2025. So, exponential adoption, and then the revenue that Tesla will make will go from a couple billion, 4 billion, up to over $100 billion in those few years. And then, but the bigger thing will be the massive impact on our world beyond that. The other evidence that Tesla is going to be a winner here is that they have 3 in-house clusters, supercomputers working on training their AI using NVIDIA GPUs. Some, when combined, total up to 1.8 exaflops of compute power. And they're making their own training chips, what they showed off in last year's AI Day, which, when fully built out with 120 tiles, will have 1.1 exaflops of power from just 120 training tiles. Training tiles are about a square foot each, which is small for this level of computing. And they have designed for it's perfectly scalable in terms of heat, software, networking, input, output, where they built up each tile where power goes in and heat goes out the top. So they can just, and then all the IOs is managed for it. So then they can, just once they get it all sorted out, just start mass producing the tiles and making 1,000 exaflops of compute from 100,000 tiles. And it's not just wasn't Moore's law that drove this, because over the last 10 years, Moore's law has accelerated computing by about 8 times. Better algorithms with better programmers provide a 25 times improvement, and Tesla and SpaceX attract the best programmers. All the top engineering students want to work there. And then they've put more money into it. So the more money you make from this thing, saying that they can make $100 billion over the next 3 years from their full self-driving software, then they can put more money, more resources into further speeding up the development. And they have, the technology software to do this as well. And they made each of the components, again, each chip within the overall tile is something that has nearly a petaflop of compute power. So part of it, I think in 2030, so on number, which would mean like 10 billion bots. 1 year of the world's GDP would make 50 billion bots if each of the bots cost about like $2,000. And instead of getting before 100 million cars per year, make that equivalent bots, you can make 3 billion bots per year. 3 billion bots being the nearly equivalent to 3.3 billion people in the entire world workforce. And I said that the adoption, would go start having this impact of expanding the world's labor productivity by 2040, and expanding to a large level by 2100. As I said before, you want to be an early adopter or an innovator, or invest in early adopters or innovators in this transition, because early adopters and innovators is where the profit is happens, as shown in the Rogers Bell's curve. And to be ready for it, you need to have things like the digital self-management, where you can train the AI, the humanoid bots. And you want to be able to, like for smartphones, build the apps that are on there. There's a million people who built apps for smartphones, part of the Apple economy, or be a million of the creators building things on YouTube for the entertainment people there. So you can become part of the future economy for training humanoid bots, using humanoid bots, taking advantage of business models using self-driving cars. So I will follow up with more analysis of the AI and the robots in future videos. Thanks for your time and attention.